All right, working on a 2016 Dodge Charger. We're going to go ahead and replace the front brake pads on the vehicle. Starting to make noise in the front when you go and hit the brakes. These are original brake pads, riding about 65,000 miles. So it's about time to go ahead and replace the brake pads. We're going to go ahead and replace them with some carbon metallic by Performance Friction. And it comes with the anti-rattle clips and the brake pads themselves. We're going to go ahead and test them out. I do know that the law enforcement or state troopers, they prefer these because they have great stopping power. So we're going to go ahead and try them out on this vehicle. See where they go with that. And to go ahead and get started, you want to go ahead and get the jack stands, get them ready. Go ahead, jack the vehicle up. Once you have placed them on the jack points up underneath the vehicle, lower the vehicle back down on the caliper on the jacks, and you can go ahead and start the removal of these lug nuts. I prefer to break the lug nuts right now while it's on the ground. Once you do that, it'll be a lot easier. Go ahead and remove the lug nuts so the tire doesn't free spin. And the size you're going to be needing is a 22 millimeter socket to go ahead and break the lug nuts loose. So we're going to go ahead and get started and get this vehicle on jack stands. All right, got the vehicle jacked up. Went ahead and placed the jacks underneath the proper areas. That's directly underneath the cane member, underneath the vehicle. And once you do that, it's safe to say we can go ahead and start removing the lug nuts. I've already done broken them loose with the breaker bar, but I like to use a cordless tool to remove the rest of the lug nut all the way through. The hard work's already done. Now you just got to remove the lug nuts. And that'll pop your tire off once you are done pulling the lug nuts off. Now once you have access to the brakes, it looks like it's going to be 13 millimeter. You got a bolt here and a bolt here to go ahead and break them loose. So I'm going to go ahead and pull my tools out and get started and break them loose. Alright, after removing the 13 millimeter bolts behind the brake caliper, this little pin right here, this will start spinning. So ensure you got yourself an 18 millimeter wrench to lock on here when you go ahead and remove the two bolts. You know, one right here, one right here. And once you do that, then it's safe to say we should be able to go ahead and remove the brake caliper. But if the brake caliper doesn't pull away so easy, you're gonna have to pry in between here to pop it out. So, and in this case, it's pretty much on there. So I'm gonna have to get a pry bar or screwdriver, big screwdriver, and pry it open. And I should be able to pull it off, set it to the side, allowing me access to the brake pads. So we can go ahead and start the removal of these little anti-rattle clips, the top and the bottoms, and get ready for the new brake pads. All right, with us about to install brand new brake pads, you have to ensure you find your brake fluid access. This is under the hood of the Dodge Charger in the back area, and you need to pop this thing open, and that allow you access to the reservoir. You're gonna have to unscrew the reservoir, pop it loose, however you want to place it aside, just leave it on top, but you must allow air to flow back through when we go to compress the calipers. So ensure that is done before compressing your calipers. Now that that's out of the way, the calipers on this vehicle are dual piston calipers, meaning you have two pistons on your brake calipers. As you can see right here, you have two pistons. So we got to compress those pistons inwards. And I went ahead and got 2 C-clamps to go ahead and do that. You can go to a parts store if you don't have C-clamps, or if you're just going to do this one-time job, and rent out a brake caliper compression kit. But in this case, we're going to go ahead and use these. Being these C-clamps are super cheap, and I'm going to use them over and over, so I always have C-clamps lying around. So I'm going to use these, pop the old brake pad in place, put 1 C-clamp here and 1 C-clamp here, and go in little by little, back and forth until these are all the way flush with this back area. All right, you can clearly see how the C-clamps are. Here's your old brake pad right here. Go ahead and press it right here. Put the other side of the caliper or the C-clamp directly behind it. Same goes with this side. And you're gonna go in little by little until this pad is flush with the backing on this caliper. So I'm gonna go ahead and rotate them, get this flushed in, and get this ready. All right, after you got your brake caliper pistons pushed in, usually what I do is I always check these little pins and boots that's on the caliper, making sure that they move freely. And then I put a little fresh grease inside of them to help them, that way they can move freely. I went ahead and pulled the caliper clips, and the box should come with the identical clips. If you by chance open the box and the clips don't match, there's a good chance your brake pads are wrong, and in which in this case the original box that I had earlier was wrong. So these are the correct pads, and as you can see, they match compared to the old style. The new one was a lot thicker, massive, so they were actually for another vehicle. So I went ahead and I had to go back and get the correct pads, swap them out, and now everything is matched and identical as what came off of it. So I'm gonna go ahead and get these new pads, and they should slide right back in like how you pulled them, like that. So that's the front one. Fits right in there like a glove. I'm going to do the same with the back side, and then squeeze these pins inwards when putting the caliper on, and then we'll go ahead and put the 13mm bolts back into place. Now when putting the bolts back into place, I highly recommend you put thread locker back on there. So that's what they had on there, and I'm going to go ahead and put more on there when putting these bolts back in to keep these these bolts from backing off. All right, went ahead and reinstalled the brake caliper right back over the brake caliper bracket. I had to push these pins inwards to slide it all the way down. And once I was able to do that, I put some thread locker on the bolts, and I went ahead and torqued these bolts down to 44 foot-pounds. All right, so that is all you would need to do. Once you are done with that, you're pretty much set and complete with the brake pads installed on one side. We'll go ahead and start the procedure on the other now. All right, with the passenger side being complete, we're going to go ahead and do the driver's side now. And again, these bolts were 22mm and broke the bolts loose when the vehicle was on the ground before jacking it onto the jack stands. So using a cordless drill after the bolts were broken loose, that's all I do. Go ahead and pull the bolt off from the pin and boot that's under there. So there's your 13mm, and you'd have to place your wrench right on here like so. So I'm going to go ahead and pop them bolts off, get the caliper and lay it up on here and get it ready for compression of the pistons. Got the brake caliper popped on top, put an old brake pad into its position on the back side, and then clamped it with C-clamps and slowly moved it inwards with left, right until it's flush. That's pretty much done. Now it's time to go ahead and jump on the clips. Of course, the clips, you'll just grab them and yank them. They're just barely held in there by these little guys right here. Now when installing your new ones, you will have to maneuver them in there. And they pretty much pop right in like so. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this other one in there. Then we'll go ahead and put the brake pads on there and then slap the brake caliper back on. But before doing that, again, these little guys, it's always nice to go ahead and pull them out and grease them and then pop it back in there. So all it is that's holding them in there is a little boot. You put a little screwdriver, pull it down, and it pops right off, and then slide it out, dip it in grease, and then slide it right back in. So That way it keeps it nice and movable like so. That one's pretty good, but I'm gonna go ahead and dip it anyways. All right, once the caliper is slid back on with the new brake pads in place, make sure that when you have the bolt, you put some thread locker on there. And then when you go ahead and put it back on the caliper, this right here, of course, is going to turn in circles. So you have to get your 18mm wrench and tighten this down and torque it down to 44 foot-pounds. All right, so I'm going to go get this bolt, and this bolt then will be complete with the brake pads installed on this side. All right, got the vehicle lowered back on the ground. Of course, the jack is still directly underneath the key member, only to support from being completely on the ground. I only have the tires barely touching it so the wheel doesn't spin in a circle when I go to torque the rim down. Now to torque the wheel down, you want to go in a star pattern, and these are not the steel police rims, so being that said, you're going to torque these at 110 foot-pounds in a star pattern. 22mm socket in a star pattern, 110 foot-pounds. Once you are done, you could go ahead and lower the vehicle completely on the ground and pump your brakes. You're going to pump it until pressure builds up on your brake pedal. Once your brake pedal is pumped up, you're going to then come outside and check to ensure that your brake fluid is at the proper full level. If it is not, .3 fluid is what is needed to ensure you top it off completely. Once you do that, you can go ahead and grab the cap, pop the cap back on there, and you are complete. Then pop your cover, beauty cover, whatever you want to call this thing, back on there, and then drive the vehicle. After you're driving about 50 plus miles, bring the vehicle back and double check and retorque your lug nuts in a star pattern. It is just a recommendation. I suggest it. I would suggest you go double checking. It's always good to double check work and safety first. And so that pretty much completes the video on the brake pad replacement on a 2016 Dodge Charger. If you like my video, please hit the like button. If you'd like to follow me, please hit the subscribe button down below. And as always, thanks for watching.